Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Tuesday, the 16th of September, all day. You join myself and Mr. Michael Brown for the morning blast, where we will be reviewing yesterday's news and prices and previewing today. But before we get going, I will get the legals out of the way. Nothing discussed on this space doesn't constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed Mr. Michael Brown. How
Very,
are you, Michael?
very good morning to you, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. Not too bad at all. Just there we go, finding somewhere to sit down. Now I'm
Oh, okay.
safely in a little cubby hole. I can have a conversation. I'm very well, thank you, Ryan.
Good, good, good. In your closet. I kind of feel like I need a little theme tune. He's in his closet. He's in his closet.
Oh
Or maybe
no,
closet might be the wrong word. But
yeah, I
anyway,
was
quick,
going to
quick,
say,
what's been
do
occurring?
you mind rephrasing that one rather
Yeah,
rapidly?
sorry. He's coming out his closet. He's
Oh,
coming out
fucking
his
hell.
closet.
Oh,
Um,
I
what,
preferred
what,
it when you were all echoey and couldn't talk.
well, I think many do, to be honest. So according to the feedback, anyway.
Quite literally
um,
feedback with what was going on yesterday.
I see
Anyway,
what you did there. See what you did there.
shall we get on?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, let's do that because it was another, very much more of the same for markets yesterday. To be completely honest with you, equities continuing to gain ground. The S&P up by about 0.5%, the Nasdaq up by 0.8% on the day, both notching record highs, and the Nasdaq 100 actually rallying for a ninth consecutive day, which is the longest winning streak since 2023. The rally clearly rolling on and the path of least resistance, leading us to the upside into the FOMC meeting tomorrow, with, of course, equities on the front foot once again this morning. Although trade elsewhere was relatively subdued, to be completely honest with you, some modest gains across the Treasury curve, some broad-based dollar softness coming in, which saw cable reclaim the 136 figure for the first time since July, and the euro test 118 to the upside, while gold is trading too fresh. Record highs just shy of $3,700 an ounce, and a little shout out to our Irish correspondent if he's listening this morning, because he did tip $3,700 an ounce yesterday, and that may be coming true in about 20 minutes time, given the way that gold is moving
Uh,
at the
uh,
moment.
who's our Irish correspondent?
The man in Kildare,
Oh, Big Jez.
the man who
Oh
can't
no,
be named.
he's overseeing some Albanians in his garage, and that sounds exactly like it is.
I'm, I am not going to ask questions, and I'm going to move swiftly on to the issue of trade, because of course we had the US-China trade talks in Madrid wrapping up yesterday. Those trade talks went, quote, very well, according to President Trump, who confirmed that he will be speaking with Chinese President Xi on Friday. The reason for this delay is basically because Trump's busy over the next couple of days coming
Well,
to
yeah.
the UK on his state visit. So Friday is sort of the first time he's got a slot in his diary to actually call the Chinese premier. He was also saying that the US-China relationship remains a strong one, and that a deal has been reached. Well, Trump said on a, quote, certain company. Treasury Secretary Bessent later confirmed that that was TikTok, although we don't really know what the framework for that deal is. There's some chatter that Oracle may be involved with it, but we're not entirely sure what the two parties have actually agreed on that front. Treasury Secretary Bessent was also giving a full readout of the discussion, saying that they discussed a wide range of issues with China, while also saying that the next round of US-China talks could result in another 90-day rollover of the tariff truce. I mean, I don't think we need the word could there. I think it's will. It's almost
Yeah.
guaranteed that this thing is just going to keep getting kicked down the road forevermore. We are 13 and a half 90-day rollovers away from the end of the Trump administration, just for those who are keeping tabs on that. Also from the Chinese side, their readout was very similar. But they were also talking to Chinese Commerce Ministry, around this idea of tariffs on China as a result of their purchases of Russian crude, saying that they firmly oppose it and they will take measures to safeguard their legitimate rights and interests. Very much commentary in line with what you would expect on that front. But I will reiterate, as we have done most days recently, the chance of those 100% tariffs being imposed on China is essentially zero, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Moving away from that and on to the Fed, because we've got quite a lot going on that front ahead of the 2-day FOMC meeting, which of course starts today and concludes tomorrow afternoon with Fed Chair Powell giving the press conference at 7:30 tomorrow night London time. Firstly, we had the one of the federal appeals courts in the United States ruling that President Trump cannot fire Lisa Cook before this FOMC meeting takes place. Of course, this goes back to the allegations of mortgage fraud that have been levelled at Lisa Cook. This was a 2-1 decision, so there was one of the justices who was in favour of letting Cook leave before this FOMC meeting takes place. The Trump administration, of course, likely to appeal this all the way up to the Supreme Court. We don't know exactly when that appeal will be lodged or when we will have a verdict on that front. But I would just stress, and this had totally slipped my mind, but I read in a Reuters report this morning, Fed Governor Cook still hasn't actually been charged with any crime. These are all
No,
just allegations and accusations that are
exactly
being
that.
thrown around. So I think that's some important context on that front. Also on the subject of the Fed board, the Senate voting last night to confirm Steve Moran to his post as a Fed governor, voting 48-47 to confirm Moran to that term, which is due to end in January and which was previously filled by Adriana Kugler. Moran, of course, I've mentioned this before, but rather worrying, he is not leaving his role as chair of the Council of Economic Advisers. He is simply taking an unpaid leave of absence from that job and, perhaps more worryingly, has not committed to resigning from that job either right now or in the event he serves on the Fed board past the end of January. So for someone who has frequently criticised the revolving door between the Fed and government, it's funny how Steve Moran's views have sort of done a complete 180 when he's the one going through that revolving door. But we'll see how dovish his dissent is at the FOMC meeting tomorrow. And lastly, on the Fed front, we heard from Jim Bullard, the former president of the St. Louis Fed yesterday. He was confirming that Bessent has interviewed him for the Fed chair. This interview took place last Wednesday. Bullard said he is very interested in the job. Well, of course he is. Who wouldn't be? But he also said that the Fed must defend the dollar, keep inflation low, and protect monetary policy independence. So that probably counts him out, to be completely honest with you. Moving away from
I
that.
see what you did there. I like it.
Yeah. Moving away from that, some news in the tech sector yesterday. China confirming that a preliminary probe into Nvidia has found that the company violated some anti-monopoly laws within the nation. This was an investigation that was launched back in December of 2024 regarding Nvidia's acquisition of a company called Mellanox Technologies.
All right.
I
Yeah,
have
those ones.
no idea who or what that is. What I would say though is that what this investigation is going to continue. China are going to carry out further probes. I would just say, does it really matter given that Nvidia can't sell anything to China? They haven't put any China sales in their guidance, and China don't want their firms to buy Nvidia chips
Well,
anyway. It all just feels a
what
bit
I
like posturing.
would what I would counter that is that Singapore are still quite significant buyers of Nvidia chips, and Singapore themselves are kind of admitting that only about 1% are used within Singapore's borders. So where are the other ones going? I think we all know. So
Are you
I think we
suggesting there
do.
might be something dodgy going on?
Well, perhaps, and I'm suggesting that, well, possibly suggesting, well, maybe I'm not, I don't know, I don't want the CCP knocking on my door, but yeah, potentially that, a lot of this is posturing, saying that they don't really want Nvidia, we don't really need Nvidia, but I don't think I don't think their domestic solutions are up to quite these standards yet, which is why we're still seeing Singapore buying an absolute shit ton of chips, and that's the technical weight of chips there. Shit tons are it's kind of like a maritime term.
I was going to say that's the official standard instrument for weighing computer chips, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Moving on from that into the corporate arena, President Trump yesterday on Truth, he was talking about all sorts of stuff on Truth. So he started off with talking about China, then he was talking about how apparently the NFL have changed the way you kick off in a game and they should change it back to how it was previously. I've got no idea. I don't know the rules of NFL, so that one was lost on me. He was then talking about how companies should no longer be forced to report their results quarterly, and he wants the SEC to expedite and look into this very quickly to change, well, it is a law actually in the United States, to require companies to report on a 6 monthly basis instead. What I think was perhaps most strange about this request was not the fact that he wants to change the reporting periodicity. He's been on that, banging that drum for quite some time now. It's the fact that he said, and I quote, "Did you ever hear the statement that China has a 50 to 100 year view on management of a company, whereas we run our companies on a quarterly basis? Not good!" Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. Quite why he's comparing the US to China on that front, I'm not entirely sure. I think this would be a bit of a ridiculous idea, to be completely honest with you. I know that we report on a half-yearly basis here in the UK, and a lot of other countries do the same, but I would argue that the push should really be for more access to companies and more corporate transparency, not less.
Well, you would assume so,
But,
right?
if you are trying to sweep something under the carpet, then maybe half-yearly reporting would help you out. Sticking in the equity space, the Swiss Parliament, they passed some bills yesterday which is going to allow the Swiss government to raise capital requirements on UBS. This could be as much as $9 or $10 billion worth of extra capital that UBS are going to have to find. It basically all relates to UBS's, well, I was going to say acquisition of Credit Suisse. It was sort of like an arranged marriage between UBS and Credit Suisse. They didn't really want to take them over, but the Swiss government kind of forced them to. And now, what are we, 2-3 years down the line, the Swiss government is saying you need to put up much more capital because you are a much bigger bank. Of course, UBS have turned around and gone, well, this is going to make us massively uncompetitive on the global stage. The company is reportedly evaluating its options, including potentially relocating to the United States in a way to get around these higher capital requirements. So we will see how that one pans out, but it looks like the Swiss could be shooting themselves in the foot a little bit on that front. And I'll wrap up this morning with just a couple of stories here in the UK. On the data front, we have had the latest labour market stats out this morning. Unemployment holding steady at 4.7% in the 3 months to July. Earnings growth, regular pay growth coming down to 4.8% from a prior 5%. That's the first time we've been below 5% since the middle of 2022. So still very high and still clearly incompatible with the 2% inflation target, but nonetheless it is slowly but surely moving in the right direction. Meanwhile, we saw HMRC, the PAYE payrolls metric, that fell in August by 8,000 for the 7th straight month. I think it says it all really when you look at that and go, oh, 8,000, that's not too bad given the scale of some of the declines that we've seen recently. Arguably the labour market here in the UK is potentially showing some signs of stabilisation and bottoming out, but bottoming out at a very, very weak and low level. And of course, downside risks remain plentiful as we move towards the budget on the 26th of November. And speaking of the political situation, news yesterday that Danny Kruger, who, unless you're an avid Westminster watcher, you've probably got no idea who he is. Well, he was the Conservative MP for East Wiltshire, forgive me. He is now the Reform MP for East Wiltshire. And I believe that this is the first time a sitting Tory MP has defected over to Farage and his party. So potentially one to keep an eye on there
I
if
tell you what,
that
to
opens
add
the
on that,
floodgates a little bit.
more importantly, perhaps, is the fact that he is actually a very smart cookie.
Yes, he's not a
And he's
complete clown.
melt. Yeah. Choose our words carefully there. But no, he's seen as kind of a very smart thinker, and he's kind of been quite crucial to a lot of kind of the inner workings of the Tory party and stuff like that. He's and also what I think is quite interesting, the role he's taking at Reform is kind of one that's dedicated to preparing for roles in government. Because as we know, Reform are kind of some people in Reform maybe aren't really experienced enough for government, and you can see that by kind of out, they speak before they think, should we say? So it'd be interesting to see how this reacts. But like you said, it's not just kind of a real, backbencher that's so far backbench that you can barely get postcards off of him anymore. This is someone that's kind of front and centre within the Tory party moving. So, like you said, potentially floodgates are opening a little bit, but we'll have a look and see over the next couple of weeks and months.
The other thing to watch on that, and who made this? Helen Thomas at Blonde Money made this point in a podcast I was listening to yesterday. We're not actually far from a poll, an opinion poll in the UK, where Reform, their percentage support, is actually above that of the Tories and Labour combined. I think we're
Yeah,
about 5 points off that level at the moment, which, given how shambolic Downing Street appears to have become over the last, well, I was going to say week, but really 12 months, but we'll be generous and say a week.
yeah.
We might not actually be too far off that point, which for a country that's had a two-party political system for 200 years is quite a landmark.
Yeah, and anyone that's listening to this saying, "Oh, what about the Greens? What about the Lib Dems?" Yeah, we'll happily give them one. So thanks for that. But no, but
Even
you're
when
very
they
right.
lead the opinion polls, we'll mention them, but we'll also pray
Yeah,
that doesn't
exactly.
happen.
But no, you're very right. It's and let's be honest. I've been looking every day. I've been checking the market for when Keir Starmer should be leaving office. And according to Polymarket, for him to leave Downing Street in 2025 is still only at 13%, which I think is a bit low at the moment. I feel like it all could come crumbling down very quickly if the right brick is removed.
Well, I think
And there's a
the issue with that is the bar to removing a Labour leader is actually quite a high one. So it's unless Starmer turned around and fell on his sword and
well,
resigned,
this is what I'm
it's
thinking.
almost
That's
how do
how
you
I think
actually
it will
engineer
happen.
that? But anyway, we could talk about
Yeah,
that
no,
all day.
exactly. No, exactly. We could very much so. But let's not do that. Let's now let me crack on and read out some headlines from our good friend Zach. Follow Zach. Do subscribe to the Substack, the Overnight News Roundup, etc. Starting off in macro and specifically Fed Reserve monetary policy. US President Trump's economic advisor Stephen Miran joins the Federal Reserve Board after Senate confirmation, arriving just in time for this week's FOMC meeting. We spoke about Lisa Cook just now. Goldman Sachs strategists warn that 5-year bonds may be the next pain point for traders, particularly vulnerable in Japan and Germany, as both countries head toward different monetary policy paths. So that sounds like widening of the spread. Asia Pacific focus. Japan's Nikkei hit a record high as tech stocks followed Wall Street's strong performance, while the country's finance minister announced support for leadership frontrunner Shinjiro Koizumi, I apologise to any Japanese listeners, in the LDP race. Activist investors poured $6 billion into Japanese stocks in the first half of this year. That's according to Reuters and Bloomberg. Moving over to China. China is expected to deliver only modest stimulus measures, with Morgan Stanley predicting a package of up to 1 trillion yuan. However, foreign investors are plotting a return to Chinese markets after 3 years of calling them uninvestable. Good luck to them, but as myself and Michael always say, do you really ever own Chinese assets? Or is it the government? UK economic data. UK labour market continues cooling, with payrolls dropping 8,000 in August and unemployment holding at a 4-year high at 4.7%. Wage growth excluding bonuses slowed to 4.8%. This is the lowest in 3 years, leading economists to believe the Bank of England has finished cutting rates. I also think it's led them to believe that Rachel Reeves is even worse than we have previously thought.
Just
Just on this,
oh,
go on, you go first.
I was going to say very briefly, the BOE will have had advanced sight of the labour market data
Yeah.
and of tomorrow's inflation data for their pre-MPC meeting. So they're not looking at the labour market data today and then rushing out a decision tomorrow.
No,
They are considering it for a bit longer than that.
good bit of colour, good bit of colour. Just quickly, because I've not seen, I've been quite busy last couple of days, believe it or not.
Makes a change.
Has Rachel Reeves come out from under her rock yet after the GDP data, etc., or is she still in hiding?
Oh, I'd imagine she'd be in hiding, but I don't know. Oh no, actually she's not. No, that's wrong.
Okay,
Her and Besant are hosting a breakfast with a load of business leaders this morning.
but she hasn't been on
Nothing
Twitter or
public.
anything like
No,
that.
not that I've
No,
seen
no,
anyway.
I don't blame her. But yeah, okay.
Done us all a favour, to be honest.
Pretty much. Geopolitical news, US-China strategic competition. The Trump administration is launching an ambitious effort to weaken China's global port network and bring strategic terminals under Western control. This is the most significant expansion of US maritime influence since the 1970s, according to Reuters. Taiwan tensions. Taiwan's defense ministry launched an updated civil defense handbook to prepare citizens for potential Chinese attack scenarios as Beijing continues to view the island as its territory. And equity news before I hand back to my dear friend Michael. Big tech moves. Microsoft raised its quarterly dividend to 91 cents from 83 cents. It's continuing its September dividend increase pattern. Google announced a £5 million UK investment over 2 years for AI infrastructure expansion. Has anyone told them about the price of electricity in the UK? If not, don't tell them.
Yeah, wait until the factory's open first.
Yeah, exactly. Apple's iPhone 18, that they will feature the company's first in-house C2 modem chip. Woohoo! With the A20 processor built on TSMC's advanced 2nm process, signaling major supply chain shifts. AI and tech developments. AI hired ex-AI CFO Mike Liberatore after he quit Elon Musk's company. If everyone remembers that, I think that feels like a little while ago, but time is kind of all a bit of a concept to me at the moment. But yeah, when ex-AI's CFO did leave Elon Musk, there was a bit of a wobble there. While warnings emerged that AI euphoria may have created the biggest bubble in private tech investing ever. There was a really good little chart that I posted from Bank of America about massive bubbles in tech industry since like basically railroad. I'll see if I can dig that out and repost it up. Data storage prices for AI centers are rising 5 to 10% in this quarter. That's going to CNBC. China's tech recovery. Jack Ma, still out there somewhere, returns to lead Alibaba's AI
Just
push
don't ask where.
in a Yeah, exactly. I'll give you a clue. I bet he's got some air quotes minders with him all the time. Jack Ma returns to lead Alibaba's AI push in a quote, "Make Alibaba great again," unquote campaign, while
Jesus.
Tencent climbs it to 4.5-year highs on offshore bond plans. However, Chinese biotech Transthera, their 4,500% surge since its Hong Kong debut raises speculation concerns. Let me break it down to you very gently. Of course, there are speculation concerns when a stock has gone up 4,500%. If you've been on that wave, congrats. But if you're not taking profit, you're a fucking idiot. Corporate highlights, finally, before I hand back. Samsung will begin 2nm mass production of its Exynos 2600 processor this month for next year's Galaxy S26 phone. They're hoping to overcome previous overheating issues. And Anglo-American, they signed with Chile's Codelco to jointly develop adjacent mines near Santiago. Obviously, Codelco, basically the biggest copper miner that there is. And that's it from me on the major news. Again, do check out the overnight news roundup for all the headlines that mattered overnight. But that's it from me. Back to you in the studio.
Very good. Thank you, Ryan. 4,500% in 3 months. That's slightly ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, if you're going to go big, go big.
Well, exactly. Yeah, just wait for a pin to be put in that and the bubble to go pop.
But I tell you what, though, at least you know it's very unlikely the government are going to want to take those off your hands at this point.
Well, yeah, there is that, I suppose.
They'll wait for the collapse to pick them up.
That's very true.
Scoop.
Right, where are we today? Quite a lot going on, actually, to be completely honest with you. Of course, we've already had the jobs data out of the UK this morning. Moving into the rest of the European session, at 10 o'clock this morning, we get the latest ZEW sentiment surveys out of Germany. The expectations metric, that is seen at 25, down from a prior 34.7. The current situation metric, that's also set to fall to minus 73.6 from a prior minus 68.6. Of course, this is September data, and with it also being German data, I'm sure we will all be cheering that those metrics continue to fall through the floor. Also at 10 o'clock this morning, we have the latest Eurozone industrial production stats. Although this data is for July, it is very stale and it certainly won't move the markets. Moving across the pond, I should say. At 1:30 this afternoon, we have the latest Canadian inflation data. CPI is seen rising back to 2% on an annual basis in August, up from the 1.7% that we saw in July. Although having said that, it's unlikely to derail a 25 basis point Bank of Canada cut. The market prices a 90% chance that the BOC deliver a cut at their next meeting, which is tomorrow afternoon. Also at 1:30, we get the latest US retail sales report. Headline sales seen having risen risen by 0.2% on a month-on-month basis in August, while the control group metric, that's seen rising by a marginally healthier 0.4%, which would be broadly unchanged from the 0.5% we saw in July. Of course, the data will be closely watched given the softness that we've started to see coming through in the labour market over the last 4 or 6 weeks or so. Participants will be looking to gauge whether that is resulting or encouraging consumers to begin tightening their belts a little bit, although I think we need a big deviation from consensus to cause too much of a market reaction, given, of course, all eyes will be on the FOMC meeting, which kicks off today ahead of that policy announcement tomorrow. Other bits and bobs on the docket this afternoon include US industrial production, which is seen falling by 0.1% in August, equaling the fall that we saw in July. Away from the data docket, we are due to hear from ECB, Simcus and Escriva as we move through the day ahead. We also get a 20-year bond auction in the United States this evening, $13 billion worth being sold off. Of course, focus also falls on geopolitical developments, trade developments, any comments that we might get from President Trump. Of course, he is going to be spending most of the day in the air coming over to the UK for his state visit. But given that the appeals court ruled against him in that Governor Cook case overnight, you would be very surprised if he was too quiet on that front. But I think overall focus on the retail sales print, but really markets really just looking forward to the FOMC meeting on Wednesday evening.
Absolutely. Just on Trump's visit to Blighty, I mean, the timing couldn't be any better or worse depending on who you are and what you believe Trump would do, because obviously with what's going on with Mandy, Peter Mandelson, not MDMA, it's a very interesting one because there's a lot kind of going on. There's a lot of moving pieces here, and there's a lot of kind of rumours about why Mandelson got that role, etc., etc. So if you ever wanted to kick Keir while he's down or really turn the screws, now would be the time. So it'd be interesting to see what Trump does. I've already seen this big nuclear power kind of joint kind of collab between the UK and America announced yesterday. But to me, I don't know if you've seen anything about that, Michael, but it does seem to be at the expense of Rolls-Royce, which was a bit odd.
Yeah, it did just seem to be sort of open the market to a load of American firms, and the firm we've got, Rolls-Royce, are going to get shafted, you would imagine.
Yeah.
But the other thing, just on the state visit.
Also, just quickly, just for anyone out there, Rolls-Royce would not. This isn't when you see Rolls-Royce, the stock price.
Not the cars.
They don't sell cars. They make like small, medium reactors, jet engines, etc., etc.
Yes, absolutely. The other thing on the whole Trump-Starmer romance situation, there was a good piece, I can't remember where it was now, I've read so much over the last day or so, basically arguing that the reason why Trump and Starmer seemed to get on so well last time was because Trump viewed him as a winner, basically going, you've just cruised to a 160 odd seat majority. It's an absolute landslide. You're doing great. You're clearly really popular in the UK. Well, it's only 4 months since they last met, but I think quite a lot has changed since they did meet last time. So I do wonder whether now basically he's perceived as a loser, whether that will change Trump's perception of him as well, and change that relationship potentially.
Exactly that. And just quickly on that point before we do, we've got a couple of minutes. Sticking with UK politics and Starmer, when you think about it, considering they came in with 140 majority, and basically we were like, oh my God, these guys could be in power for decades. It's been quite. I'm going to choose my words lightly. It's been quite interesting watching the unravelling of the Labour Party. But
well, I was talking to Dickie Matthews yesterday, and we were doing some filming. Dickie. That will be out later on today. If anyone fancies having a gander at that.
What kind of filming is this?
No, it was markets related. Don't worry.
Okay.
And one of the points he made was actually that with a majority that large, it can become quite difficult to keep everyone in line, basically, because you don't have enough jobs to go round. You've got 400 odd Labour MPs. They all want something. They don't want to just be an MP. They want to be, some sort of lowly government minister or a trade envoy to some Timbuktu or wherever.
Yeah.
But there simply aren't enough jobs to go round. And because you don't have that sort of carrot to dangle in front of your MPs, maintaining discipline and messaging and making sure they're all voting for what you want them to vote for becomes a bit of a nightmare, which is why we've had this, big rebellion on things like welfare spending. Exactly.
I said
And it's the same.
cooks.
It's the same issue that that Boris had after the 2019 election. Actually,
Exactly, exactly. It's funny enough. You've mentioned Helen Thomas, our dear friend from Blonde Money. She actually mentioned this pretty much straight after the election that potentially Labour's biggest problem could be Labour itself, with so many MPs and so many with different
just
ideologies within the
tear
Labour
themselves
Party.
apart.
Exactly, and this is what's happened. And it's been glorious to watch. I mean, what? But anyway, on that note, Michael, thank you very, very much. As always, my dear, dear friend. Listeners, also thank you very much